Thanks for being with us today, Simon.
Hey, you can call me Peter. That's what most everybody calls me.
Very well, Peter.
That's the Greek way of saying it, of course. Anyhow, Jesus and the other guys, they call me Cephas, but that means the same thing. Means rock. I'm not really sure why they call me that. I guess I'm kind of hard-headed at times. So.
Well, thank you for that explanation. Peter, let's talk about a minute about Jesus.
Oh yeah. So about that, it's not true, by the way. Not entirely accurate. If you know what I'm saying, the things you've heard.
No, I don't. What's not accurate?
I wish it were true, but it's not really, not technically anyhow. I wasn't with Jesus all the way to the end. If by the end you mean his death, anyway, though it looks like that's not really the end of it anyhow. After his death, that's a different matter. But all the way up to his death, I was there most of the way. That's, a little bit right before his death and kind of during. I wasn't there for that, but a good 99% of the time, maybe 99.8. The rooster thing, maybe 96.4% of the time.
Okay, Peter, let's settle down just a little bit. Let's back up. Why don't you start by telling me about your relationship with Jesus?
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, it all started a couple years ago, maybe 3 years ago, maybe a little less. I'd probably have to look at a calendar. Anyway, Andrew and I were fishing. That's my brother, Andrew. And Jesus called us to follow him. And what a time it's been since then. You'd never believe the huge crowds and the wild things we saw, the miracles, people all messed up, getting put back together right in front of us. And Jesus walking on water, and man, could he spot fish. Just about ruined our nets. The stories I could tell you, I could just talk your ear off.
Oh, I'm sure. Peter, I understand that you were Jesus' closest friend.
Oh, sure. Yeah, we were real tight. He even paid my temple tax for me one year. He said, "Go down to the creek and pull out a fish, and it'll have enough money in its belly to pay the tax for both of us." Sure enough, I did. Pulled out this nice big pike, slid it open, had 2 coins in it. Weirdest thing. Jesus would come over to the house, help out, clean some dishes, heal my mother-in-law, or anything like that he could. We got along real well. He called me Satan one time, but that was totally my fault.
He called you Satan?
Well, not just like that. He could be real complimentary, too. He asked who we thought he was, and I said that he was the Messiah. And he was real glad for me for that I got it right, affirming and all that. "Right you are," he said, "and you are the rock. And people say that I'm the Messiah, that the Messiah is the rock I'll build the church on." And I was all pleased with myself. But then he kept on talking. You know how some people keep on talking. And he says he was going to be arrested and tortured and killed and all of that. And then he would rise again on the 3rd day. And to be honest, I didn't want to hear that kind of stuff. So I said, "God forbid." And that's when he called me Satan.
I'm not making the connection. Why would he call you Satan for not wanting him to suffer?
Well, "Get behind me, Satan," is what he actually said. "You're thinking like people think, not like God thinks." Turns out that he was right about that, just like he was right about everything else.
You mean about you being Satan?
Well, no. Gee, at least I hope not. No, he was right about the suffering and dying part, and the rest of it too. That's just what happened.
You said that you weren't with Jesus to the very end. What happened?
Well, we were sitting down to dinner together, leaning down to dinner, really. You know how people do. It was Passover then, the Seder. It's the last meal we had together, until recently, of course. And Jesus said that one of us was going to betray him. We all wanted Jesus to know it wasn't going to be us. I said, even if I have to die for you, I'm not going to betray you, ever. Everybody else said something like that too. But Jesus told me that I would let him down 3 times, right then, before the next morning. Stabbed me in the heart with a knife, basically. That hurt worse than being called Satan. I couldn't believe he didn't trust me better than that. After all that time, then we all went for a walk in this little park called Gethsemane.
But you were still with Jesus.
So far, yeah. Jesus went off on his own for a little while, and we all had trouble staying awake. He had to keep coming over and waking me up. But yeah, we were all still with him then, even after the mob arrived.
The mob? Can you tell me about that?
Well, there was this whole pile of soldiers with armor and javelins and torches and the whole bit. It basically looked like they had just walked off of a movie set. And leading the bunch up the hill was Judas Iscariot. I thought at first that Judas had gotten some of the soldiers over to our side, to come and follow. It would have been great to have had some bodyguards. Things were getting pretty tense at that time. And Judas was smart like that, good at organizing. He was our treasurer and all of that. But as soon as Judas gave Jesus a hello kiss, something that we would have done, the mob went on the attack. Turns out Judas ended up being some kind of a double agent.
And then this is when you left Jesus.
Did worse than that, if you must know, but not yet. I was all gung-ho at first. I had a sword with me. You don't go walking around Jerusalem at night unarmed, especially around Passover time. Too many of out-of-towners and too many Romans. So I pulled out my sword and took a swipe at this guy, Malchus, who works for the high priest. I had great aim, too, if I must say so myself. Cut his ear right off.
I didn't hear about any violence when Jesus was arrested.
Well, there wasn't much. That was it, really. Jesus told me to put the sword away, and I did. Then he told the soldiers that he'd go peacefully if they let us all go. So they put the cuffs on him and drug him off.
And that's when you ran away.
Most of the guys did. I didn't, and John didn't either. We faked like that's what we were doing, but then we snuck along behind the soldiers, hiding in the bushes, waiting to see where they took him. If Judas can play double agent, then John and I could definitely do some spying of our own.
So where did you end up going?
Well, we went to the high priest house, Caiaphas. John ran up ahead and caught up with Jesus, and they let John in because he knew some of the people there. I think he even met the high priest himself a couple of times. John talked to one of the maids later, and she let me into the courtyard.
I'm not understanding. Why do you say that you let Jesus down? It sounds to me like you were pretty supportive.
Well, I'm getting to that. The maid says to me, "Oh, you're with that Jesus guy they just drug in here." And I'm still into the spy thing, and didn't want to blow my cover, of course. So I lied and said I didn't know what she was talking about. And then I'm standing in the courtyard after she lets me in, warming myself by the fire, and the soldiers keep staring at me. One guy says, "You got to be with that troublemaker Jesus. You have the same accent like he does." And another one goes, "Yeah, didn't I see you at Gethsemane?" And I know he did too, because I definitely saw him there. But I kept saying, no, I never even heard of Jesus. And then the rooster crows, and the sun comes up, and it's morning, and Jesus was right. Again, I turned my back on him over and over.
That's certainly understandable.
Well, no, it's not. John stayed with him. Some of the women even were there. Even his mother stood by him. As hard as it would have been for us, it would have been 1,000,000 times worse for her. But 9 of the others who were with Jesus on that night, on that last night, and I ran and hid. And we're still hiding.
And yet you called to set up this interview.
Well, things have changed. I don't think we're going to be hiding out much longer. This morning, we woke up to a frantic pounding on the door. We thought it was going to be the police coming to get us, but it was Mary Magdalene, who stayed with Jesus the whole time. She had just run like a maniac back from the tomb. She went there as soon as the Sabbath was over so she could finish embalming Jesus. But when she got there, The body was gone. Then she said Jesus was alive. We thought she was hallucinating or something. You know, wishful thinking, anxiety attacks, something like that.
Could she prove what she said?
Well, we didn't wait around for her to. John and I took off like a shot and headed for the tomb. John got there first because he's a lot younger than I am, you know. But he got to the door and he got to the door of the tomb and he froze. And so I pushed him aside and went in, and sure enough, it was empty.
The Roman authorities are claiming that the guards fell asleep and that the body was stolen.
Nope, that's not true. That didn't happen. The body wasn't stolen. Jesus is alive.
Now, you told our producers this morning on the phone that you weren't sure if that was true.
Well, when I called this morning, I wasn't sure. But just before I left to come here and meet your cameraman, we had a visit. Sure enough, Jesus came to us. We didn't know how he did it. The doors we had were locked tight, but there he was.
He's still alive? Is he still there? Can we have an interview with him?
Well, I don't know where he is now. After a while, he just wasn't there anymore.
Forgive me, but are you sure you're not hallucinating yourself? And that this is just wishful thinking?
Well, I thought that myself too, but then Jesus pulled up a chair and ate with us. Hallucinations don't move furniture. Wishful thinking doesn't chew fish. Jesus is alive.
Peter, this is incredible news, especially during what others might consider a confusing time for you. What do you plan on doing next?
Well, for me, this isn't confusing time at all. Things have never been clearer. I didn't understand half the things Jesus said to me at the time, but it's all coming together now. He once said he'd make us fish for people. And I'm thinking, what's up with that? Are we supposed to put a sandwich on the end of a line and cast it out into the street? But I understand now. The hook is the cross, and Jesus is the bait. What am I going to do now? I'm going to go back to work. I've got some fishing to do.
Thank you, Peter. This is truly a fascinating story.
You are very welcome. I'm glad I could tell it.
Incredible developments in this fascinating story. Join us next week as we continue our interviews. We're interviewing Mary Magdalene, one of the most colorful characters in this story.